We are all fools in some way, shape, or form, but a fool with principles is Solomon Reed. Normally, I try to be more narrative-y with my intros, but I will fully admit, I cannot fully figure this man out, and while I could be wrong, I think that is by design. Because as V points out in one potential end of Reed's story, the man himself doesn't seem to fully know who he is either. Or perhaps, even worse, outright refuses to open his eyes to it. Hello, my name is Liddy, and welcome to Shaped by Stories, where we unpack how characters shape stories, and how those stories shape us. Let's get into it. Solomon Reed was likely born in the NUSA, and I'm estimating sometime in the 2030s. And this guess is largely based on the age of the character Maine from Edgerunners, and I will explain what Maine has to do with this in a minute. At some point in Saul's youth, he joined the NUSA military, and he ended up in one of their Spec Ops units. Not unlike Rosalind Myers, Solomon Reed was highly competent, but most of all, he was extremely loyal to the NUSA, and the values it toted on the public side. The NUSA had long been poking around in South America, with a lot of covert operations on their to-do list while they were there. Saul and his unit were actually deployed to South America, and while it's unclear what they were all getting up to down there, Saul is said in the Edgerunners mission kit to have taken part in the burning of civilian villages. I don't know why, but I'm sure for Saul, he saw it as, well, my country is ordering me to do this, so I must do it. In fact, one of his unit members was none other than Maine from Edgerunners, who he actually became quite good friends with. Maine is said in the mission kit to be in his late 30s, so that is where I'm kind of getting my guess of Solomon's age from, but he might be older. Maine stayed with Solomon's team for 2 years in South America before he just couldn't take any more of what he saw as unnecessary carnage. Maine was discharged from the military and went back to the NUSA. While I couldn't find anything directly stating Reed's own feelings in regard to raising villages and even potentially harming innocent people in South America, he remained with his unit and the NUSA military long after Maine left. But at some point, Solomon joined the NUSA Federal Intelligence Agency, the FIA. As Idris Elba outlines in the Night City Wire episode for Phantom Liberty, Solomon Reed was very dedicated to his work, and he genuinely enjoyed the challenging nature of all his operations. He found deep purpose in serving his country, and in doing it in a way that he excelled at. We can sort of deduce from what Reed did in South America that he's likely done a lot of very shady, questionable things, both in the military and for the FIA, but in his mind, because it was for his country, it was necessary. He was carrying out an order from command for a higher purpose, which is a dangerous line of justification to wholly surrender yourself to. Reed quickly rose to the top ranks of the FIA. He was one of the most respected operatives in its ranks, and by the time Rosalind Myers came into power, he was basically on a last name basis with her, no title required sort of deal. I think he even calls her by her first name sometimes, if I'm remembering that correctly. The president clearly trusted Reed to carry out his missions to the letter, and Reed was extremely loyal to her, and the NUSA that she talked about building. However, at the agency HQ at Langley, Reed had a mixed reputation. Some of his fellow operatives liked him, and some didn't, which isn't surprising at all because I feel like that's how Reed just comes off. He's a guy you can't quite figure out, and for some people that's okay, and for some that's mildly frustrating. But however his coworkers felt about him, few would contest his ability in the field. It was likely due to Reed's more familiar friendship with the president that saved Song So-mi from getting fried. President Myers can tell V in the Elizabeth Cress hideout about how you don't kill talented kids, you recruit them. And after the teenage Song So-mi's hacking of a Militech data fort, it seemed Solomon Reed agreed with that. But the other thing I do want to pose as a possibility here is that Reed could have been the one to first urge the president not to jump the gun and flatline Somi. I'm leaning more towards that personally because Songbird isn't the only kid that Reed has recruited in a similar way. Alex can say, depending on dialogue choices in one of Reed's endings, that he always had an obsession with saving other people, largely because he couldn't ever save himself. And perhaps it's not just that he couldn't physically save himself, but mentally, circumstantially either, at least in his mind. That's the problem with Reed. He is in a prison of his own mind, and he never really realizes it unless you pick a certain ending. Reed's offer to Somi in her apartment is either join the FIA, or get flatlined or imprisoned by Netwatch, and watch all of your loved ones get screwed over because of you choosing to choose yourself rather than to serve your country. It's definitely very manipulative, and it's gross that this is how Saul is going about it. Like, it's pretty easy to guess what choice most people would make in Somi's shoes here, especially when it's dressed up as a patriotic duty rather than a punishment. Reed likely viewed this as saving Somi, saving her from death or from wasting her talent as a netrunner. But Reed has a way of not seeing the potential out of the frying pan into the fire consequences of the people he saves and how he chooses to save them. Granted, I don't think he could have predicted what Myers would have done to Somi in the years to come, but he'd seen enough horrific things that the NUSA could be about. He'd taken part in a number of those horrific things himself. But still, Reed refused to really acknowledge those horrors for what they were in the face of his ideals, his principles. And he kind of dragged a vulnerable kid with no options into things too. Same thing with Alex, not long after. Alex was actually looking to get out of poverty and XBDs, and she auditioned at a new BD studio set up in the Los Angeles Metroplex. But it turns out this was actually a front for the FIA. It's not directly stated that this particular operation was run by Reed himself, but Alex was basically recruited by him for her acting skills and plunked in his unit. Sure, Alex didn't have the threat of Netwatch on her back, but for her it was either rot away in the slums that she grew up in, or join the FIA. There was no real choice for her either, not really. One could look at Saul recruiting these two vulnerable kids as him trying to help them out, but you could also look at them as Saul taking advantage of said vulnerable kids and using their extreme aptitudes for their net running / acting skills to benefit the country. Not because it was right, but because it fell in line with his ideals. Now, I want to take a second to discuss the unique sides of Solomon Reed that Alex and Somi can really bring out in his character for both the player and for V to better understand this man of mystery. First, with Somi, we see that she is closest to Reed. Myers describes her as his protege, and Solomon Reed does not argue with this fact. By 2077, you can see that Somi has sort of evolved to take on a number of Reed's own behaviors and tactics. Even some of Myers's, but that is for Somi's video. Reed made a point to build a strong bond of trust with Somi. He promised her, even though she didn't believe him, that he would always be there to get her out of a shitty situation. He made it a point to be there for her to talk to protect her whenever he could. And I think Reed genuinely did care about Somi a lot. I think for this career man, she's sort of the closest thing that he had to a daughter. And for her, who grew up without a dad, Saul was the closest thing that she had to a father. Somi had, from what I can gather, a troubled relationship with her mother, as she was actually living in her own apartment before she was even a legal adult. So Solomon really did kind of fill that role of a parent in her life, and Somi really did open up to him in a number of ways. She showed Solomon Reed her favorite quesadilla stand. He and Alex joined her at her grave when she was declared dead upon joining the FIA. Saul also knew about Somi giving the medal that Myers gave her to a homeless man, and he never gave her any shit for it, despite his own feelings for the NUSA. While Somi's and Saul's relationship was still a working relationship, I think she was someone that he was loyal to, enough to even rival his loyalty to his country. But it would become extremely difficult to maintain that balancing act. I wonder if Myers noticed his care for Somi and saw it as a potential problem down the road. I don't necessarily think she saw it as a liability in the field, because during the Unification War, Saul's team, including Somi and Alex, was apparently quite effective against Arasaka. But I do wonder if Myers saw Saul's determination to keep Somi safe as a threat for what she could very well have been planning to do to Somi for a long time, to use Somi as a vessel to control the Black Wall. And I was more skeptical of the possibility that Reed could actually pose a threat to that plan, at least in previous videos I was, but the more that I think about it, and the more that I have looked into Solomon Reed as a character, if anyone in the FIA could have helped Somi escape, it would have been Reed. Maybe it wouldn't be successful in the end, but I'm coming around on that being a bigger concern for Myers than I was before. I actually saw a thing about Phantom Liberty recently where the narrative director actually described Reed as the sort of guy where if you want a government changed in a foreign country, Reed is the guy you send there. And then, very naturally, and still suddenly, look, a new government appears in said country. Reed is a very capable, threatening kind of guy who gets results and does it without leaving much of a trail behind him. Or at least in the past, he was. When it comes to Alex, Elena Xenakis, we see a different sort of Reed. It definitely feels more mentor-student, but Alex definitely seems to be the more cautious and more, I guess, widely aware of the two, and it does make sense that she would be. Even though Somi and Alex were likely similar ages when they were recruited by Reed, Alex has been through the ringer. She grew up in the slums of Los Angeles, and her parents were spiraling into addiction when she was just a kid. She was lured and then trapped in the XBD trade when she was still a minor. Alex grew up surrounded by drugs, violence, and the overall promise or threat that her life would both begin and end in the Metroplex. At least until the FIA came along. Alex is a rather spunky, unabashed person when V meets her in 2077, and judging from Reed's reaction to her reaction to seeing him after so many years, he fully expected the reception that he got from her. I don't think it's a crazy assumption that she's always been far from meek and of her own mind and a lot more capable of just adjusting to the world of the FIA. Alex needed to know how to handle herself before because she grew up having no choice. She was maybe seen as needing less guidance than Somi did. When Saul recruited Alex, she was around 18 years old. She was sent out on her first mission shortly after joining up, and I totally blanked on discussing this in Alex's video. Thank you for bringing this up, MikuLaRest001. This is really important. So Alex has some interactions with V and a few series of text messages, and the one I wanted to talk about is the following. Alex says, "I was 18 on my first mission. This guy stepped in my path. A random thug. Reed told me then, don't see him as a person, but an obstacle that must be overcome." And that was that. So Reed is a cold motherfucker. He will kill without hesitation. Sure, he might not be enjoying it. I actually think he is almost kind of numb to it, at least he was during the prime of his career. But he will do it. Perhaps this kind of dehumanization of others is how he's able to, quote-unquote, handle it. Because Reed is many things, but he's not a heartless, unfeeling person. Him teaching this same coping mechanism to Alex, and likely to Somi as well, I totally get it, it keeps them alive, but that is a super traumatizing way of looking at other people, at framing other people as obstacles that simply must be overcome with a bullet. Yeah, odds are from what Alex is saying, the guy that she ended up flatlining would have had no hesitation in harming her. In Reed's mind, he's helping the girls survive in this very dangerous line of work that he's put them in. But I don't really think in the long run this way of thinking has helped him. I think in the Phantom Liberty ending, Reed is a very broken man, and all of his compartmentalizing, his delusion, dehumanizing, his moralizing, of all the things that he's done, I think it really shows the chunk it's taken out of him here. In the character of Songbird, we see the side of Reed that is more of the human. But with Alex, we see more of the agent, the patriot. He's someone who can kill without a second thought if he feels he has to do it, if he's been ordered to do it, even if the reasons are questionable as hell. But he's also someone who has a soft spot for cripples, bastards, and broken things, obligatory Song of Ice and Fire reference. And I think deep down, he sees himself in that same way. But it is a shame that in thinking he was helping these girls, he lends a hand towards their potential destruction. Did Solomon Reed recruit these girls knowing fully the shit that they were gonna go through? No, nobody can see the future. But did he know what people in the NUSA, the FIA, were capable of? Yes, including himself. Perhaps the most obvious sense of these two proteges' destruction is Songbird's body being borged out to the point that she is a weapon. She's treated like a tool. She is dehumanized, probably under the same line of thought that Solomon Reed may have taught her. Myers and he aren't that different in how they can remove the person from the human when it suits their needs. And as for Alex, this was actually something pointed out by channel member Neon Akira in my Alex video comment section. We know that the special implants that she has that change her face and her biometric data, it also changes her brain to suit whoever she's playing. How much damage does that deal? What long-term damage could there be to Alex's mind? It makes you wonder. This woman of 1,000 faces could end her life seeing all of them at once. However So-Mi or Alex's story ends, whether or not Reed could have foreseen it, he was the harbinger for more unfortunate things to come for both of these talented operatives. Around 2069, Reed was assigned to Night City with his cell. This included Songbird, Alex, and a number of unnamed operatives. His main job was to hit Arasaka from the shadows, hampering their movements throughout Night City, all while the Unification War was ramping up. He even asked Maine to come back and help build an FIA spy network in Night City, though Maine declined. When the war was coming to an uneasy close in 2070, Myers called off their final op and told Reed to get him and his operatives out of the city. Their final gig was to take out an Arasaka admiral named Murata Uzuru. But it seemed he'd be living another day. That is, until his AV was sabotaged on Reed's last scheduled day in Night City, killing the admiral and his family. Reed and Songbird both thought that was a bit odd, but Reed, as he can tell V in 2077, had a final thing to take care of, getting his people out of NC. At this point, the last unaccounted for agent who hadn't been evac'd was Jonas Collinson, and Reed set out to make sure he got out before he did. According to So-Mi, Jonas was skeevy and he would not think twice about leaving him, but Reed didn't care. In his eyes, his team was his responsibility. Reed found Jonas in the No-Tell Motel where he was being held by an Arasaka assassin. After Reed dispatched the assassin and untied Jonas, the younger agent reveals that he bombed the AV himself, as he wanted to impress Reed. Reed was quite angry and annoyed. The only person who was supposed to die, Reed says, was the Admiral, not his family. And all this makes me think of is President Snow's line in the Hunger Games, "We both know I'm not above killing children, but I'm not wasteful." Reed's evac ship is arriving soon, and he and Jonas race to get to the rendezvous, but only one seat was paid for. Reed sends Jonas ahead in his place and contacts So-Mi, who was still in the city, for a new evac plan. She told him earlier that day that there is no honor in Night City, which ends up being a sort of warning for what would soon occur. Somi quickly came up with a new escape plan, getting Saul on a train to SoCal. As Idris Elba says about Reed in his commentary of the Phantom Liberty trailer, Reed standing atop that billboard stand, ready to take that huge leap. He says he thinks Reed was really thinking of freedom here, just sort of rolling it over in his head. It's something that he's not used to after so many years in service of his country. He's probably a bit nervous, but also excited that he gets to finally go home. And presumably, Somi and Alex get to go home too. Saul makes the leap, gets in the train, and sits down. He wants to know about Somi's escape plan, as she's still in the Dogtown hideout, and he's just sitting on the train dreaming of quesadillas. He has a personal moment where he feels relief, finally. Except it's not. Somi, on Myers' orders, has set Solomon up to be handed over to be killed by Arasaka. This is why Somi was still in Night City. This is why she didn't leave before Reed, as Reed probably would have preferred it. There's a moment where you can see Reed realize what's happened, and Idris Elba says that he has such a brief window to really feel that hurt, the hurt of betrayal, the shock of it. He did fully trust Somi, and I'm betting he really trusted Myers too, but both of those relationships were shattered in that moment. You can see it on his face. There's anger and grief and just everything there. But Reed decides to fight like hell against his attackers, to give it a shot to escape, but he is overcome. Yet somehow Reed survives. It is a rough recovery, and Reed is comatose for a number of months, and he can't function without aid for some time after waking up. But despite what he recognizes as a betrayal done to him by his country, a president who he had always loyally served, and an agent that he had seen as a daughter, he continues to remain with the NUSA, only now as a sleeper agent in Night City. Everybody else thinks Reed is dead, that he was a traitor who actually worked for Arasaka. Very few knew the truth, and that included the president and Song So-mi. In between 2070 and 2077, Reed found work as a bouncer. In fact, V can meet him at Dino's bar prior to Phantom Liberty. He actually has a phone call, I think, with Dino in the car after the basketball court scene when you first meet Reed. It's just funny to think of Dino heckling him and Reed being like, "This is my day off, go away." It makes you wonder if Dino did know about Reed being FIA. I don't think it's that crazy that he would have figured it out and maybe not said anything, given how canny a Corpo Slimeball Dino is. Anyway, Reed being a bouncer is also a little reference to Idris Elba's work as a bouncer before his career really took off. There's also a reference in the Phantom Liberty trailer to him being a DJ, which is why he has some songs on the Phantom Liberty soundtrack. Fun fact. Also, there's that Cyberpunk James Bond reference with the 007 percentage. Look at that. Now that would be a James Bond that is aware of his effect on women. During this time, Reed did have a special someone, as we can overhear him say to Alex in The Moth. But that relationship didn't really pan out. Secret agent life was probably not very helpful. That little conversation between Alex and Reed really does remind you of how lonely a life they both live. Like, you can't really have friends in their situation, or else you might blow your cover. Reed also apparently used to play basketball a lot, but he seems to have stopped during his Night City plateau. Maybe that's due to his injuries. Maybe he just lost any desire to even do anything for himself after that betrayal, which does make a lot of sense when you hear him talk about it later on. Speaking of Alex, Reed never reached out to her, despite her being a hop, skip, and a jump away in Dogtown. He didn't reach out to So-mi, he didn't talk to anybody, insofar as we know. Sure, he had a break from the FIA work for 7 years, but it was anything but a vacation. It was anything but a period of rest and recovery. For Reed, it sounds like every day was just work, gym, go home, sleep, maybe attempt to have a social life, then fail at the social life, and then go home, sleep, work again, maybe try the social life thing again when being around Dino got annoying. But then ultimately he just gave up completely because, yeah, you're just tired. Reed's not doing too great during this time, I think. I think he's just existing. After dealing with such a traumatic event, he really is just left to deal with it himself. Until that crazy day in 2077, when Space Force 1 crash lands smack in the middle of Dogtown. Even then, Reed didn't jump to blow his cover. He needed to be awoken, as is the usual way with a sleeper agent. And who does Myers send to wake him up, in her despair? A chrome-the-fuck-out mercenary with Johnny Silverhand in their noggin, using a payphone of all things. I love it when you actually do manage to play the spy game with Reed when you first meet him at the basketball court. A place he may know very well. This may have been a place where he actually was able to be normal for a bit before his betrayal. Maybe he came here and just played basketball with random locals for shits and giggles. I mean, even aside from the sentimental value of this place, if there is, Reed has the high ground here. He knows the area from his time in Dogtown. Every time I play this section, I botch it, and I'm not good at being a spy. I'm really not. I tried turning around to look at him, and he just gave me a last warning, and I didn't test it because I was too scared of what would happen. I figured he'd kill me. But I googled it, and he will knock you out if you get too pushy. Then you wake up in his truck, and then he offers you aspirin. Reed is obviously a bit testy about being summoned back by the president who ordered his execution. And he's even more on edge when he sees who he's working with. He appreciates it when V is honest, and it makes him feel a bit better to know that he's working with a V who can play a bit of the secret agent game. If that V can talk circles around people, suss out a weird situation. But otherwise, if V is not good at playing the secret agent game, he's like...
What the... Oh shit.
Reed may have been out of commission for a number of years, but he is right on about everything. He asks if Myers smokes to gauge her stress level, asking about V and if they had a tail, about who's with Myers. He's doing the best he can, even though it's been years since he's flexed these FIA muscles. In fact, Reed's concerns can be proven correct should V and Myers have been caught on camera in the tunnels that led to Elizabeth Crest Street. Jacob and Taylor will be dead in this case, right by the elevator, following an attack by Barguest. So yeah, this makes things even more messy for Reed. I also see the smoking question as a way for him to gauge how nervous Myers might be to see him again, after everything that's happened. Reed knows he's walking into a situation where he kinda has the power here. If he walks away, Myers is completely screwed. But there is no way that he would walk away from her. We know this. He is still with the NUSA, even after all these years. Myers is almost his only chance to crawl back to the person he once was. A person that I think he is just desperate to be again. There's also this fun line for a Corpo V where they can sort of poke fun at Solomon Reed for their dislike of Arasaka. Reed can kind of jab a bit at V about how they were on Arasaka's payroll and all that, but V just points out that in this case, the two of them are very similar, both screwed over and left to die, more or less, by the company that they gave everything to. Now, when you get to the hideout, if you have Jacob and Taylor alive and guarding Myers, Reed immediately disarms them and orders them aside. If you talk to Taylor afterwards and apologize for Reed's introduction...
You'll have to excuse my friend. He's sometimes excitable.
Right. You ought to teach him about the value of initial impressions. At least his kind goes guns blazing. I mean, screw those stab you in the Baxters.
And then, Myers and Reed reunite for the first time in 7 years. There's definitely a sort of circling sensation with Reed here, like he's waiting to see Myers show her hand. She does try the friendship angle at first, a bit more awkward of an approach, but she quickly gets to what she knows will be more persuasive for Reed, saying that Not only does Myers need to be evacuated from Night City, but that So-Mi is stuck somewhere in Dogtown, almost certainly in danger. And even Myers is tense about this point because she damn well knows that her ordering So-Mi to be the one to hand him off could very well be the biggest whoopsie she's done in a long time. For all she knows, the pain of who carried out Myers' order could be worse than the actual order. The way Reed is lit here while he's just thinking of what the hell he's gonna do really shows how fractured he is. The slatted lighting of the blinds. He's not the same person he used to be, and he probably never will be again. Reed may have been free in a sense, as he was away from the FIA's machinations for the last 7 years, but he wasn't truly. In his mind, he was stuck, not moving forward, and no going back. Betrayal is not an easy wound to heal from, and imagine it on the scale that he survived. He's fighting a lot when he's looking out that window at nothing in particular. The ideals he once clung to, the people he cared about who threw him to the wolves, and the desire to, maybe, somehow, return to the man he once was. An ocean of time and betrayal stands between the Reed he once knew and the Reed living a half-life that he now is. And somewhere out there in the middle of it all is So-Mi. You can also see the lighting choice here as a warning. Who is this guy who stands in the shadows? Who never really steps out of them? Reed can be polite to V, even friendly. He can even sympathize with V's situation, yet another person with their back to the wall, with no choice. I'd even say he does develop a degree of care for V, not unlike his care for So-Mi and Alex, even if it's minimal. But that degree of care is ultimately meaningless if that person stands against those splintered ideals that he's tried to keep in one piece all these years. Reed evacuates Myers from Night City so long as V doesn't screw up being a secret agent. If V screws up, I think both he and Myers actually die. They get killed by Barghest. But after he escapes, he will text V to say that the escape went off without a hitch, and he says not to worry about Jacob and Taylor anymore. I've gone over this point in my last 2 Phantom Liberty videos, mainly in the Myers video. I have never even seen a screenshot on Reddit of their bodies, but the main thing that I can't stop thinking about with Jacob and Taylor and Saul is Taylor's line of, "At least he's not a stab you in the back type." See, it's the little details in this story that make you stop and go, wait a minute, hold on. This is our first big hint of what Reed could be capable of. You don't think he's gonna stab you in the back, until he does. It's because he's good at his job. Also, it's just such a corny secret agent line. Don't worry about them anymore. Like, blah. And you know, to Reed's credit, in the ending where it does come down to V versus him, he aims his gun at your face and counts down. He warns you. Do I think he totally executed Jacob and Taylor? Yes, he probably shot them in the back instead of stabbed them, but he does do V that bit of decency, if you want to use that word. It sort of fits the kind of honor that I think he wishes that he could say he has, whereas I do think under many circumstances he can be downright dishonorable if we want to get into using those terms. Reed wants V to meet him at the Moth, where they're gonna loop Alex into Operation Bird in the cage. We see the first of a bit of a double standard with Reed here, where Reed doesn't fill us in on his past with Alex. That as far as she knows, he's dead and was a traitor. But meanwhile, he was a bit irritated with how Myers didn't tell V the full story of what happened with his betrayal. Sure, he tells V over the phone before V realizes that they've actually spoken to Alex when V is sitting at the bar in the Moth, but he leaves a lot out still. Reed doesn't try to fight Alex's reaction to his return. It sort of sucks for Alex because she has to get up and leave her bar to go outside. He's just like a rock that just showed up, plunked down, and decided, I'm not moving until I get what I want from you. But when Alex does storm out, he actually does sit at the bar looking really sad. And I do believe that that sadness is extremely genuine. He does this a lot. There is this look that Reed gets. Reed's not a happy person. He's lonely, he's been betrayed, and he's let down arguably one of his most dedicated operatives, Alex. Even if he might not have been as close to her as he was to So-Mi, he still does care about Alex. Alex was the one who rarely messed up. She was effective and damn good at her job, even in the middle of highly stressful and potentially deadly situations. If anyone deserved to get out of Night City 7 years ago, it was Alex. But she's been stuck, just like Reed, for 7 years, pretending to be someone else. And the other thing too is that Alex could have been his friend in this period of 7 years, but that was ruined by the cover story. It's not even just the fact that he was a sleeper agent who was supposed to play dead. It's also the fact that Alex thought he was a traitor. Why did they have to salt that wound? It really cut Solomon off from any bit of friendship from his old life. Outside, Alex fills us in on the important details of Reed, as well as Songbird's history with her and Reed. This includes Alex's honest take on how working with these two tends to go.
Here's the list of operatives. Reed, Songbird, and me. Haven't heard this, have you? That's just perfect. Tell me you believe in coincidences? Or, fuck it, fate? 'Cause plug the same variables into an equation, and surprise! Gonna get the same fucking result. Shit in, shit out.
Alex is, as I say in her video, one of the most honest people in Night City when it comes to just being real with V. She doesn't try to hide things or to lie and manipulate, because she's sick of all that. We, as the player, can also quickly become irritated with Reed's tendency to do these things too, as the story goes on. I like that Alex also skips any potential manipulation by Reed when she makes her offer of helping. She will help, but she wants a retirement. He can't try the honor angle on her. He can't try the for old time's sake thing on her either. Alex joins up on her own terms, demanding her retirement. She cuts through the bullshit here. And Reed doesn't fight her, he accepts it. When V and Reed then go after Slider, we do get a quest where we can almost feel like we're building a sense of camaraderie with Reed. It's quite cool to work with him, this FIA operative who's supposed to be so high up the clearance chain, who's supposed to be kind of a badass. Even Corpo V in counterintelligence has never heard of him. That is how high up Solomon Reed is in the files. But then, after dealing with Slider... Side note, I said in my Cassell Twins video that you could save Slider and then Reed kills him anyway. I don't know why I thought this, because you can't. Like, he gets fried either way, no matter what you do. So I was wrong about that, I'm sorry. V realizes that Reed would have flatlined the guy anyway, no matter what happened. Reed won't outright admit this fact, but him treating V's question as a, does it really matter now he's dead, says it all. And I think the worst thing for his potential friendship with V is that he didn't even bring it up prior to going into the Voodoo Boy's lair, knowing full well what he was gonna do. And Reed has a nasty habit of doing this, thinking that he can't trust V, but he's perpetuating the fact that V doesn't trust him, and then he can't trust V, and then it just goes on and on and on. I get why he's doing it, but it's not helping to improve the situation. After Reed and V go their separate ways, so Reed and Alex and V can help to get the Black Sapphire heist on the rails, we meet Reed again at the Moth. And here, Reed does open up to V for the first time. After V collapses from one of their relic attacks and explains their situation, Reed admits that he knows what it's like to be a dead man walking. He says that while he survived the attack meant to kill him, he sometimes feels like those assassins succeeded. He explains the betrayal more than he previously did, and Reed really did get bit by the beast that he'd been following all these years. A beast he'd sort of wielded himself in the name of his country. Reed says that it's part of the job, but we know that day in the train traumatized him far more than he will openly say. You can see it in his eyes. So why does he still stick with the FIA? The NUSA, that is the question. Reed takes V downstairs and introduces them to the hideout that he and his team worked out of 7 years ago. the team he was willing to sacrifice himself for to save, even though he lost most of them through sacrificing them for his country, or what he thought was best for his country. He tries to turn the lights on, but they flicker, leaving him in that dim red light. This is a guy who has wandered in shadows for too long. He's just about lost. And at this point, he struggles to avoid mean reds. Yes, hello, Misty. They're all that really lights his way back to some semblance of that someone he was, at least until he gets the power on. Reed speaks bleakly of the Unification War, of how both sides rushed to tie up loose ends. One of his cell operatives died in a car bombing before they could get out of NC. Another was poisoned. A third was shot in the back of the head while buying a pack of smokes, and 2 others just dropped off the face of the earth entirely. These losses haunt him, especially considering that he's the reason why his people dug their heels in despite the danger. Reed could have ordered his cell to leave once the war was clearing up, but he ordered them to stay put for longer than was necessary. And he admits to V that he's not even sure why he did it. He's not sure if it was just plain stupidity or boldness, or that he simply just didn't know when to let go or how to lose. It reminds me of the Sunset Boulevard line that Alex says about Norma, about how her and Norma are similar in the sense that they both didn't really know when to quit. Reed goes over every detail of Somi's betrayal as he fires up the hideout, sitting at the desk where Somi sat that day that she sealed his fate. But he says that he doesn't really blame Somi for what happened. Rather, he places more blame on Myers, explaining it as a necessary evil sort of thing. I love this line that he says when V asks if he's really trying to save Somi or if he wants revenge.
Reed, what you're doing now is saving her, or is it revenge?
I don't have a vengeful bone left in me. I had plenty of time to examine this under a microscope. Under focus, some things sharpen, others blur. But there comes a point when you just cut through the bullshit and see what's in front of you.
I do believe him here. I think he is sincere when he says he doesn't want revenge. He doesn't have that left in him. But I think he is definitely still pained by what happened with Somi. Reed is not the kind of guy who is just comfortable being vulnerable with even people he knows well. It's like a part of him is trying to open up, but he still can only do so in a very controlled manner. But as Reed says, he holds Myers as the truly responsible party for the order. He says, in his words, that he's cut through the bullshit, and I think deep down he really has. But what he struggles with is letting that bullshit go and float up to the surface so he can just skim it off. He struggles with reconciling the truth with his beliefs, the beliefs that he's held his whole adult life, that he's built his identity on. All of his principles sort of go back to the idea that he's working for the greater good, and in his case, the greater good is his country, the NUSA. If any atrocities or crimes or whatever terrible thing he has to do, if it's committed in the name of his country, then it's sort of okay, right? Because it's for the greater good. The concepts of honor and loyalty do mean a lot to him, but the issue is that obviously that loyalty and honor is not returned to him by the entity that he is devoting those 2 primary characteristics of himself towards. And those don't always go hand in hand with the deep care that he does have towards the people in his more personal life side of things. And we see him still cling to his principles, despite how self-destructive and often contradictory they are in the face of the actual world around him. He even says that he wrote the tragic tale of his betrayal himself, because he's the one who ordered his team to stay in Night City longer, because he's the one who led all those operations against Arasaka. You play grown-up games, you get grown-up consequences, he says. Which, for me, that statement of his calls back to him looping Alex and Somi into these grown-up games with grown-up consequences when they really were still kids, certainly compared to him. Saul has an almost too extreme way of speaking about accountability when that's not even fair to himself. And also not necessarily fair to others either. And that part of him really makes me go, wow, because this guy, he seems so aware of what is morally gray, that things are morally complex, but he cherry picks it depending on the situation, and he knows he does it, I think, but it's cognitive dissonance to protect that place deep inside him, maybe? Saul speaks very transactionally about his work and the choices that he's made, the choices of those around him. He really does railroad himself into seeing things in a very emotionally removed sort of way. And while, okay, sure, sometimes in a way that is necessary, you really can miss a lot when that's the only lens you have. Reed is a human at the end of the day. The emotional side of things definitely affects him, no matter how much he might try to ignore it. But in regards to rescuing So-Mi, Reed says that if she's on a sinking ship, he will do everything he can to get her off said ship. He made a promise to So-Mi many years ago that he would do that very thing, even if it means he has to go down with said ship. Reed here is telling us one of his fates. He will do exactly that, depending on your ending chosen. And I think this can easily be seen as him trying to be honorable, at least by his definition, of sticking to his principles to the very end. But beneath that ending, which we're going to talk about later, I think Reed is so resigned to death at this point. If he died for So-Mi, he would be like, okay, but not so much out of his care for her as I think it would be because he's just so broken, and that would still be a shred of the man he once was. To die in the pursuit of trying to keep that promise to So-Mi. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. I keep having to say that because I keep getting off track. There's many things to be said. When Alex enters after that discussion and Reed curtails the subject, he gets into what he's found out about Songbird and the Black Wall, what Myers has been doing with So-Mi while Reed has been in the dark all these years. And Saul does sound pretty disgusted, and we don't often hear that edge in his voice. He does cut through the bullshit here and says what Myers is.
I dove into old mission files wherever So-Mi was involved. They were buried deep, near impossible to access, even with my clearance. Each and every one, the Black Wall, all authorizations, mission orders, personally signed by one person, Rosalind Myers.
Wouldn't want to be in her shoes if that shit floats to the top.
The NUS is a small country governed by a woman with highly ambitious goals. Sometimes those ambitions went out of reason. But that's not something we need to pore over now.
Saul recognizes that her poking the Black Wall is crazy, and he recognizes beneath that what's been done to So-Mi is heinous, which makes his leanings in the endings particularly fascinating. I also sort of find that, while I don't think he wants to be too anti-Myers in front of Alex out of habit, he does try to answer V's question for more info on Myers. I don't know, I took how he brought up the Blackwall papers he found as a more indirect way of answering V without maybe saying more than he was comfortable saying when Alex comes in and he has to reroute the conversation. Once V gets equipped for the Black Sapphire heist, Reed asks what Mr. Hands wanted in exchange for his help in making this op happen. And Reed shows his frustration with politics, which is a bit funny on the surface, because, guy, you work for the government, but you know, Reed is a hands-on kind of guy. He enjoys his work in the field in getting things done. He's not one for the manipulations and mind games of the people in charge of him, yet he still employs those mind games when he needs to. Which, again, an interesting conundrum. He continues to serve the people who he is, all but directly saying he doesn't like, and will continue to do so in most endings. Again, there's so many contradicting things about this guy. I end up with more questions at the end of each section of this video. After a disastrous attempt at getting Reed through the skyscraper, I had to reload 5 times before I could actually nail that stealth section. I'm so bad at it. We end up at the big party. And what the hell? Reed's dripped the fuck out. I don't hate V's suit, but I don't love it. It's meh. I feel like we're not nearly as cool looking as Reed is here, and I'm like, come on. But right before that, when you're riding the elevator up to the party entrance, there is a missable moment where Reed will be a bit concerned about how V's doing. He says V's looking a little pale, and then Reed will scan V. If V answers that they're fine. You could read this as a genuine concern, or maybe it's more of that, I don't trust you enough to even tell me how you're doing. Because there's already been a few instances of Reed not exactly trusting V. Again, Reed, this isn't helping. V can also, depending on what dialogue option you choose here, tell Reed a bit about the disastrous Konpeki Plaza heist in that elevator. In this option, V is kind of reminded of that elevator ride with Jackie, about how things seemed fine when they were heading up to the penthouse, but the way down was a different story. This is a moment that can actually feel, again, like a friendship-building attempt between V and Saul, where V is just being honest, which can make a later discussion with Reed actually super bitter. At the party, Reed goes straight to the bar. He's drinking. He says that he finds it easier to piece things together, to process better with a drink in his hand, and yes, I too have come up with big thoughts while drinking. I feel that he's probably drinking for a couple other reasons. Here Reed is, on the cusp of reuniting with the protege who sent him to die. The protege who's using a very familiar tactic on V. This meeting has been a long time coming, with a lot of emotions Reed will not outwardly express. And I was also surprised too by Reed's kind of direct questioning of the bartender while they were supposed to be looking for Somi. It felt kind of sloppy. Like, I know Hansen could have found out we were there from any number of his people, but I'm sure the bartenders would rather blab about anything sus to Barguest rather than get in the shit with Hansen for not doing so later on. It just felt weird. Maybe it's the drink, maybe he's rusty, or maybe for Reed it was just a matter of anxiety to just like, oh god, let's get this over with. When V does find Somi and Reed appears, it is definitely an awkward moment. It is a moment where I think V is thinking,
I should go.
Reed looks at Somi with that sad look. Not in a manipulative way, at least I don't feel it is. But he's just pained, I think. And he can see that she is also ashamed of herself. And I think it's for more than just the betrayal on the train that day. I think she is ashamed of the person that she is now forced to be because of her circumstances. Here we hear one of the first, I think, truly transparent lines from Somi, where Saul immediately comforts her.
Saul, I've made so many mistakes.
It's all right, son. Not your fault. The blame's on us. All of it.
On you?
Yes, all of them. I know what they made you do. They pushed and pushed, and I wasn't there to stop it.
And this really does hurt because Saul, who hadn't really expressed his level of upset for what happened to Somi in front of V and Alex, lets a bit more of Solomon Reed the person show. Every other time a more personal tangent comes up throughout Phantom Liberty, Reed does this thing where he interjects, he shuts it down, says they have to focus, it's a waste of time. This time, it's V who has to cut it off. When Reed looks at Somi and he kind of puts his hand on his head and he rubs the back of his neck, he's pissed off and he blames himself for what's been done to the girl he promised to always be there for. Part of that look that he gives her when he first walks up and sees what she is now, I'm guessing that look is partially due to the shock of seeing the level of her modifications. I'm guessing that he knew beforehand that Songbird is Borged to basically Atom Smasher levels, with only her brain and nervous system really being all that remains of the girl who showed him her favorite quesadilla place all those years ago. The girl who said while he was driving her out of Brooklyn after recruiting her, full of doubts, I guess you've saved my life. But it's another thing entirely to see it for himself in person. Reed outright admits that he failed to protect her, as he sees it, and it's his fault, Myers' fault, that So-Mi was forced into all the Blackwall stuff. And I do feel really terrible for him here, because I think he does take that personal failure of his, of failing to keep the promise he swore he would keep. I don't even think Songbird blames him half as much as he blames himself. So-Mi still cares for her old mentor, and there's a degree of openness with him even still. In fact, it's here that she admits, facing Saul, that she can't leave the sapphire. She admits that not only does V need what's here to survive, but so does she. She is dying too. And then V can be like, you didn't tell me that part, So-Mi. She hasn't forgotten the transparent bond that she used to share with Solomon Reed, and it's still there. She still has a bit of that left. After regrouping with Reed, when Hansen takes So-Mi away, we find Reed back at the bar.
Seems your special agent has special needs. Trying to drown his sins and sorrows.
All good there, Reed?
Yeah, I just need to process for a minute. It's just how I'm built. A little adversity and I need a few moments to think.
Reed is doing his big thinking, and it's a big one. Reed and potentially V can both realize that So-Mi has been playing a game.
Come up with anything?
Yeah, we now know who took a swipe at Myers' head.
Thinking Songbird planned the whole thing.
You're thinking right. Don't know about you, but I see coincidences as patterns, structures we have yet to recognize.
Huh. What you driving at?
SF-1 crashes. Not anywhere, but over specific turf. Controlled by someone who found some obscure forgotten tech in a secret bunker.
Right?
Crash was an inside job. We suspected that from the get-go. Now we know it was. And we know it was Songbird. She was behind it.
And it took you just one drink to cobble that together?
Started seeing the pieces falling into place up on the mezzanine. So-Mi told her she's dying. Things follow from that. She made a deal with Hansen earlier. Had to. Before any of this went down. Traded the president's life for access to the tech.
The NUS press sold to a crime lord. Huge. If true.
Myers pressured So-Mi to reach further, breach boundaries. And then So-Mi snapped.
Don't know about that. Song recruited me specifically to pull Myers out of that wreck. Seriously doubt she wanted her dead or snatched by Hansen.
It's never that simple, V. As I see it, So-Mi was playing both sides, simultaneously spinning deals with Hansen and you. She has Hansen set, then you come in. She contacts you via the relic, asks you to rescue the president. Absolution for her right there. You need to cure just as much, guaranteeing you'll help if her plan falls through.
Reed may be an old dog, but he is very well versed in the stunt that So-Mi is trying to pull. Her operational footwork is one Reed knows well. Yes, he acknowledges that So-Mi doing what she did with Myers would be defined as treason back home, even if she did enlist V to come and rescue her. This isn't like her alleged past screw-ups. He doesn't really even seem to blame her here for just how bad a mess it is. He still reasons that Myers pushed So-Mi way too far, which is very true. You can actually find a medical file where a doctor warned So-Mi's superiors that she needed mental help, but when Myers read it, if she even did, she disregarded it. But as much as Reed sympathizes with So-Mi, he does reveal that she's been playing V too. She's been trying to play both sides just in case shit fell through and she needs to look like she's not the guilty party. But it's not going that well. And then Reed proceeds to read So-Mi like a book.
And here we are.
Yeah, and here we are, rushing to Songbird's rescue. Thinking a few steps ahead was always her strength. But judgment calls and situational assessment, her Achilles heel. As a chess master, she'd be famous for dazzling plays and excruciatingly beautiful defeats.
Shit. Can't shake the feeling she's still running a game. Sure seems more upfront than at first. No way she's telling all, though.
Could be right. Staying alert's never a bad idea. But I know Somi well enough to know she'll do her damnedest to be fair.
Reed is really interesting and almost likable at multiple points, like when he's just letting his mind go and showing what he's really good at. But when you read between the lines, you just end up thinking, I just want to go home. This is too much. I can't trust anybody out here. But I also love, just like how Reed can predict his own self-fulfilled end, with the line I just played about Somi, Reed is outlining exactly how she plays V. Every bit of that line, the dazzling plays, etc., all of it, it's exactly what Somi's final betrayal of V ends up feeling like. Even her fumbling grasp at situational awareness in the events leading up to it. But then Reed admits that Somi is the type who would also do her damnedest to be fair to V. And indeed, she does, in telling V the truth about the neural matrix, right before she and V make it to the rocket. Somi tells this truth when she is at her most vulnerable, and as she passes out, she knows that her fate is entirely up to V here. More on this in her video, though. In terms of where Reed intends to take Somi, though, he won't say. He says he needs more information before he can commit to the next part of the plan, that he's just built that way. Even V can admit that they genuinely can't figure Reed out here, and they really nailed that sensation from a writing perspective. But then, Reed goes missing while V is scanning the Cassell twins. It turns out, Hansen figured out pretty quick that he and V had ties to the FIA. His men took Reed aside and separated him from the party, and he behaved rather than endanger the op. Hansen lets V and Reed leave in one piece, though. A mistake he probably, for about 2 seconds, lived to regret. Back at the Moth, it's planning time again. Reed does the thing where he doesn't want to dig up the past or to get distracted unnecessarily when Alex tries to bring up one of their last, more stressful operations. Stressful because of a mistake Somi made. Personally, I think he feels really dumb about how the Black Sapphire op was a tad fumbled at the end there, and he likely blames himself as he tends to do. Reed really does put a lot of onus on himself in any kind of situation that goes even slightly wrong. Even if he isn't necessarily the one at fault, he just takes all the blame. Reed speaks of the stadium mission as giving them the opportunity to right some wrongs. But Alex is fed up at this. She tells him that none of what happened with Somi's decisions was his own fault. But to Reed's credit, he does realize that Songbird was in a difficult situation, that she couldn't just say no to Myers, that her desire to escape Myers and what Myers was putting her through is one he can understand. But Reed also still seems ready to take all the pressure and weight of all of what Somi has done in her escape on his own shoulders, unreasonably so. Like, he might think he's helping by taking as much blame as he does, but he really isn't. But I'm sure that the FIA loves that he will just take responsibility and not make a ruckus up the ladder to his superiors. After going over the plan to get the neural matrix and Somi out of the stadium, Reed admits that the order to kill Hansen as well came from Myers personally, which leads to V asking just how much Myers knows about what Somi did with Space Force 1. Reed basically says that she's being kept in the dark as much as possible, which is a huge risk for him to take, especially for someone who he no longer fully trusts, against someone who he also no longer trusts, but who has immense power. He really is trying to walk a delicate line between his country and his old promise to Somi, and that will cost him, no matter how it's cut. V goes about Dogtown and handles things as per usual, hacking the Cassell twins' car rental network. V hangs out with Alex. V talks to Somi and hears her plan for her actual escape that is very different from what Reed was planning. But we also have to go to a clinic that Reed has booked for us, with a Ripperdoc named Farida, who's actually a loyal ex-member of the NUSA military. She was actually under Hansen's command when he was sent to NC. She didn't want to stick with Barghest when Kurt Hansen went rogue, but Hansen let her stay in Dogtown to conduct business and also use her Ripperdoc skills on some of Barghest's men. Farida is supposed to implant V with the same shape-shifting tech that Alex uses on Reed's order. But of course, Reed emerges from the shadows, unannounced. Reed didn't tell V that he was gonna be here, and he still doesn't fully trust V. Just as he says with Songbird, no unconditional trust. He feels he still needs to convince V, or as V can put it, sell his plan of action. You could definitely see it as Reed trying to sell himself his own plan. So here, Reed fully calls what Somi did treason, with a lot more emphasis than he has before. It's like he's leaning back into the agent side of himself. I kind of wonder if he made the decision to reach out to Myers in between the briefing and this scene here to tell her more of what Somi did. It's interesting to see this agent Reed, because it's like he's tapping into this version of himself from 7 years ago. And that includes his perspective on So-Mi 7 years ago, the same perspective on Myers a bit too. Even when it comes to his experience with death. It's like he's shoving all of what he's experienced from his betrayal onwards just aside. I don't know. I feel like he's entered a hard stage of denial here. It's like the last wall between him admitting that his whole world is just falling apart. Yet he still says he wants to save So-Mi. That is his main focus. He still acknowledges the shit she's gone through, and he does still blame Myers, but he's really clinging to Agent Reed. He's reasoning that prison is better than death, that his forgiveness makes Myers' inability to forgive So-Mi far easier to bear for her. He says Songbird is due compensation for all the things she's been forced to do, but the compensation she'd get would be a punishment. Again, he's really giving his all to make this make sense, sticking his head in sand that is saturated with his own blood, mind you. Reed says that he needs to talk to So-Mi face to face before he can really make a full decision of where he's gonna take her. That's the first big thing he wants to do after rescuing her, or as V can say, it's kind of like kidnapping her, Saul. Saul says that he'll take her somewhere safe and he'll help her disappear once he gets the answers he's looking for. I do think 7 years ago, he probably would have done just that if he'd known what was coming for So-Mi. More and more I do. And more I think Myers was taking out 2 birds with 1 stone with her trying to get rid of Reed. But just the fact that he was speaking about So-Mi's options back in the NUSA, about prison being preferable to death, it makes me doubt his sincerity here a lot. Even if he really wishes to do things like get her somewhere safe and actually help her do what she wants, he even says that he doesn't trust So-Mi. Try as he might to hide it, as much as he cares for her, the pain of what has happened with So-Mi still does sting him. It's like here he's trying to snap back to Agent really hard, at least that's my perspective on him. He says that he's not, but I think he is. I think he's really trying to remember the bad shit So-Mi did to make it easier for him to hand her over to the FIA so that he can continue to be the Agent Reed that he was 7 years ago. Because he certainly can't go back to the relationship he had with Songbird before. He just can't. I guess what makes the FIA easier is that it is a organization, not a person. But he's struggling with this too. He still blames himself, then he blames Myers, then he says Songbird committed treason in a way that makes you see how much Agent Reed doesn't like that. But then he'll begrudgingly admit his escape plan is also treasonous too, if V points it out. A V that calls him a liar, though, gets an uncharacteristically angry reaction. If Reed is lying, which I don't know, it's not so much to be a dick, I think, if he is, but because he's willingly deluding himself into thinking that this is gonna work, this is the best path, it makes sense, I can make it happen. He says to V earlier that he is a sore loser. Could he be so sore a loser that he would willingly lie to himself? to salvage some shred of the person he used to be? I think he wants to save So-mi, but knows he can't help her escape. He wants to be loyal to his nation, but he knows he can't trust it. I have no idea here. Let me know your thoughts. Saul continues to reason with V that he has contacts in Europe, that they can fix up both V and Songbird. But for Reed, So-mi is his priority over V. He fully admits that. And he says that he thinks she doesn't really realize what she's doing, that she's not mentally competent enough, given the damage all her contact with the Black Wall has dealt to her. But again, that just feels like another excuse to wiggle his way out of entertaining the other, more life-altering possibility that the best thing for Reed to do would be to abandon the FIA, to leave the nation he's given his life to serve, literally, the identity he's built. And it's no simple thing to just leave everything behind like that. Because what happens when that identity of a loyal, patriotic NUSA operative and soldier and veteran, what happens when you rip that away from him? What was any of the things he's done for? The people he's killed, those villages he burned for the NUSA, all the way back in his Spec Ops days. For Johnny, the horrors of that kind of warfare drove him to the hard opposite end of the spectrum, raging in the prison of his own trauma and screaming into a void, only for no one to really hear or care about what he was trying to tell the world. Reed went hard the other way, and the pile of shit he's done for his oath, for his president, for nationalistic pride, take away the box that is in, and you have to face the ugliness that was inside it. What does that make you? It's not a simple, fast kind of journey of self-discovery. You're basically ripping yourself open at that point. Reed will also say that he suspects that So-mi has another plan waiting to spring when she thinks the moment is right. One that goes against Reed and Alex. And depending on when you go to talk to Songbird, depending on the dialogue choices you make with Reed in this conversation, you can tell him that his suspicions were correct. But he looks so hurt to know this. And while part of him knew, the other part of him didn't want to think that So-mi would betray him again. Because he's literally been explaining away her betrayal in as many ways as he can come up with, and trying to soften it by blaming Myers, by blaming himself. He can't this time. But as I mentioned, Reed seems to be viewing So-mi through the lens of how he saw her 7 years ago. The icebreaker he gives to V might just be foolproof for most netrunners, but Songbird wields the Black Wall. And he wants to talk to her, but has to kidnap her to do it. And once again, he does that thing where he's like, talking time is later, and then he leaves. He really does that a lot. Every time he does it, I think it's because he's becoming uncomfortable with the subject, because it threatens to get a little too close to shattering his worldview. And that's so unfortunate. Anyway, Saul leaves and V gets their face ripped off. Johnny appears while V is getting their surgery, and I think he's right when he says that he thinks both Songbird and Reed are telling the truth as they see it, in the sense that their motives are relatively honest. But they're both also delusional, and they're absolutely willing to drag V along with lies and exaggerations and omissions if it gets them what they want. We've seen that for ourselves. Do they enjoy it? No, but will they do it? Yes. And Johnny has no clue who to side with, because both need V, but neither trusts V, as he says. I do like how Johnny sees in Reed what could have been him had he not deserted, had he gone the opposite way and really clung to the corpo government blah 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 about everything. If he'd actually bought into that oath full time. I do love to see how Johnny goes from absolutely despising Reed to being like, oh shit, wait a minute, this guy and I, we have a lot in common. Both were sort of slaves to their own ideals, to their very self-destructive ends. But along comes V for both of these characters, who can maybe help them see things in a different way, to free them in a way from the prison of said ideals. But overall, Johnny ends up giving some solid words of advice to Center V before diving into the final show. Don't do anything they'll both regret. Easier said than done. jump to the Cassell twins' carjacking. Reed and Alex execute them without warning, coldly, efficiently, and V is pissed. I will say, yeah, it is a little weird that V would be upset that the Cassell twins were killed because they were innocent. And all this spy stuff, sure. In general, though, I don't think so. But yeah, it was cold. Reed does try to explain away his actions. He tries to rationalize it as necessary. He can try to moralize it in the sense that the Cassells were criminals who had almost certainly harmed people in the past in some way. But what I think is the biggest red flag here is, once again, Reed didn't tell V the whole plan. And this is not good considering this is the biggest mission they're doing so far. This is the big one. If he didn't think V should know about the execution, what else is he hiding? V and Alex assume their disguises and enter the Dogtown Stadium. After managing to get Hansen to let his guard down and V is able to get to the neural matrix with Songbird, we have that final tense moment. The moment we decide the fate of our characters. And for Reed, there is a number of bittersweet to downright depressing outcomes. Should you side with So-Mi and escape, naturally, Reed is pretty pissed off. There's actually a short I saw the other day where should you enter that one elevator without So-Mi and activate it to one of the other levels, Reed will be right there waiting for you to flatline you as soon as the door opens. There's no mercy.
Reed, where are you going?
It's over.
In the tunnels, though, when you're escaping with Songbird from the stadium, there is this moment where you encounter these two Barguest-affiliated maintenance workers, and when we just walked right past them, Songbird didn't try to hurt them or anything, I just couldn't help but think of how Reed 100% probably would have shot the shit out of these guys, But Reed will call V after V escapes with So-Mi, and he tells V that the FIA will find them. He will find them both. He tries numerous angles to try and get V to cave. He says V's helping a traitor, that V is going to get So-Mi killed, there's no way to survive, that V doesn't want the whole NUSA to be an enemy. He really tries to appeal to V's recognition of how desperate things are even being a bit patronizing depending on the dialogue choices. Every single attempt of his fails, however. Reed can make a dig then at V's arrogance, but the worst parting line is when Reed brings up Jackie.
Aim to fight it out, Reed, to the very end.
Is that what you told Wells at Konpeki Plaza too? You need to grow up one of these days, start taking responsibility. If not for yourself, then for others.
What the fuck? Wow, Reed, that was cold. It shouldn't be surprising that he decided to use Jackie like that to really sting V, but it still caught me off guard. What the fuck? Especially recalling how V kind of opened up a bit about their trauma from that op in the Black Sapphire elevator, and here's Reed taking that, and he knows what happened there. Of course he knows. The FIA clearly knew some things about the Konpeki Plaza heist. I think Oleg had something to do with that. Reed knows better than anyone what it's like to let someone down that you genuinely thought you were gonna be there for. And he knows how much that hurts, and that is why he's turning it on V. Oh my god, Reed is clawing for any advantage here. He is desperate indeed. And that's not a good look. V and So-Mi make a break for the spaceport to get Songbird to the moon. And there, on the roof, as the two are sneaking through maintenance tunnels, we see that Solomon Reed has already tracked us here. And then, Myers arrives. Reed tells her that he has everything under control, but he has lost virtually all support from her, save in killing V, and at the very least, salvaging So-Mi's body. You could also just see her bringing soldiers in as a way for her to ensure that Salt doesn't fuck up, because these soldiers will, at the very least, do what they gotta do without hesitation. Trusting V is thrown at him as a slip-up of his, even though Myers was kind of the one that instigated this whole alliance, that invited V to join the FIA. It's classic Myers. She sort of just walks all over Reed here, and you can almost feel Reed biting back his words in those moments of silence between them. Reed agrees with everything Myers says in regards to no loose ends, about the Black Wall and all those projects. He's just nodding, he's just agreeing, until Myers tries to appeal to his sincerity, to his own grief over So-Mi.
I get that you want to protect her, but your duty, first and foremost, is to your country.
Songbird made her choice. Now she needs to learn what the consequences are. We're on the same page. No risks. That's how it'll be.
Do you hear that?
Just so you know, this isn't any easier for me, Reed. I liked the girl, trusted her. But with some choices, there's no way back.
Choices? Yours or hers?
Say again?
You heard me. No matter. I know what I have to do, and I'll do it.
I authorize you to take any and all necessary action. Just try not to shoot her in the head.
I'd have expected as much.
And yes, Reed does roll back over pretty quick after this discussion, but yeah, for him it's just, you don't get to say any of that after what you did to her. Reed does despise Myers for what happened to So-Mi, yet he still just takes it because he blames himself, and at this point he's just trying to cling to the last thing he might have of his old life, a life he's spent forever building. And that's whatever fragments of his time with the FIA that he can pick up. Nearing the rocket, when So-Mi tells us the truth, we have the choice to call Reed. And Reed, despite everything, still pushes the offer to save V, should V hand over So-Mi peacefully. Which is certainly unique, because I don't think Myers would do that, if it was just her. I'm actually amazed that Myers lets Reed do this. Reed here brings up the top-of-the-line rippers at Langley who can do the surgery. He says they'll do everything they can to save So-Mi, saying that she'll live. She'll live as if being Myers' tool for the rest of her life is living. He's pushing this transaction. He doesn't even really get snide, which I found very surprising. Even when V is skeptical, he says, "Try me first, V, come on." Reed was right about So-Mi from the beginning. He read her perfectly in the Sapphire. Everything he said came true. V handing over So-Mi feels like such a predictably human thing to do. You fucked me over and now I'll fuck you over. Reed plays off of that. It's like he knows how people tend to work, and he was kind of holding out hope, I think, for something like that to happen, for V to be that kind of person, a very normal human in that sense. He says he doesn't know who So-Mi is anymore, but that he won't be the one to judge her. He feels so cold and steely here, though he does promise V the help that V needs. Despite everything, he does arrange it and he makes it happen. Afterwards, Reed will meet you right before he's set to drive to DC, all the way from Night City. He wants the long drive to think, and he also hates trains. He admits that he was partially hoping to miss V, but now that V is there, he admits that he has trouble sleeping. He has trouble getting certain thoughts out of his head, and the one he asks V about is why V thinks So-Mi reached out to them and not him when Space Force 1 was going down. V can say it was just logical, that she knew she couldn't fool Reed, that she didn't trust Reed, that she regretted what happened to Reed 7 years before. But I do personally think it was because V was well equipped to understand her situation, to empathize. And on top of that, string along because of it. She could dangle that very same hope of survival that kept So-Mi going to ensure she had the protection and services of Night City's most ridiculously lucky merc. But V ultimately doesn't know the answer. Only Songbird can answer that question. But Reed says he can't even talk to her, that is impossible now. And I think he is feeling doubts. Yes, Agent Reed is mostly here now, but I think beneath it, he's like, this feels wrong. He leaves Night City saying, "Time to fly," right back to his old cage in Langley. In the Phantom Liberty ending, he doesn't show up when V gets taken in the AV, which is something that V remembers when they wake up to Reed. And it sucks because he would have been that one familiar face there, but he wasn't there. even as V says now in 2079, Reed looks so different from that familiar face. And he does. He looks haggard to me. I know that like he looks clean here, but to me, when I look at the expression in his face, he looks haggard, and I never thought I'd ever say that in regards to Idris Elba. Reed has that look in his eyes. It's sadder and emptier, and just here he kind of did author his own fate, but it feels like he hasn't really had a conversation with anyone in a long time. That V is the only person he's really talked to in ages, truly spoken to, kind of. Even then, he's probably still not fully letting himself be in the conversation. No matter what choice you made in getting the Phantom Liberty ending, he still offers V a job at Langley too, and I feel like he is trying to actually help V. Before the 2-year time jump between 2077 and 2079, Reed will say that he thinks Somi's going to be back to active duty and all this, but clearly I don't think she is. I think she is maybe not quite a vegetable, but she's not back in the field. I think she's sealed in a room somewhere. Reed has to live right next door to Somi, in a way, at least mentally, knowing that he fucked that up for her catastrophically. I think it does eat away at him every day. And I do feel like, in the end credits, when he's trying to push that desk job at V, he really is awkwardly trying to be a sort of friend. Even despite V turning on him, he still wants to save someone, even if he's luring them into a soul-sucking corporate job for that government of all governments. A job he knows is run by, as Gary the Prophet says, reptilians. Reed has his old surroundings back. He has the remains of his old identity, but you can't just erase all the shit he's lived through that undermines it all. It's all still there, whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. And I do feel really bad for him here. He's doing paperwork, he's training recruits. This is an easy life. But he's not happy. He's just hollow now. His first sense of, oh, I helped someone in 2 years is V waking up, only to find out they've lost literally everything. Be it Alex, Somi, V, or who knows what other recruits that he has worked with throughout his career. All of these people that he's wanted to help and even promised to help, he ultimately, even if unintentionally, contributed to their destruction. Bad things happen when Solomon Reed tries to help. And how can you truly help someone if you're not actually, at your core, loyal to them? When you are loyal to a cold, power-hungry entity that pretends it cares. And Reed leaves V, saying,
Thank you.
No need, V. You've got no reason to thank me.
Of course, you could always just shoot Reed and put Somi on the rocket. Reed will not stand down, no matter what V says. He even full-on tells V that they are to blame because of V's decision to help her. Not even bothering to blame Myers anymore, or himself. He says if V really wants to save her, leave her with him. But then V brings up what V and Somi overheard between him and Myers, the order to kill them both. And Reed just says, well, the situation's changed. I bet it has. He insists that he can still help her. He will not let go. And then he says that Songbird will answer for treason. She will face the consequences. She's nearly started a war with her actions, after all. And here it is, Agent Reed has taken the full mantle here, or at least on the surface he has. And that's the thing too, because earlier he was saying that Somi deserved compensation for what she's gone through, for the things that she did for Myers and the NUSA. But now we got the complete flip side, where he's saying no, she needs to face consequences for treason. And yes, sure, people change their mind, that's part of being human. And I'm sure that maybe the slaughtering of, 300 Spec Ops soldiers may have had something to do with his change of mind, but somehow, to me, this just feels like a very sudden, desperate attempt at trying to see things from a different perspective to make this easier for him. V can then say this to Reed.
Taking Songbird to Washington. She'll answer for treason. She has to.
Been hiding behind the NUS flag all your life. Come a day, they'll drape it over your casket.
You'll never understand.
Understand a lot more than you do. You ain't doing this for the NUS. Or for Myers. Doing this for you alone. Got it. You're nothing. No one.
Grow the hell up. Came to terms with my personal failure way back. But caring about Somi, I strove to help her. Well, she shot all over everything I could say in her defense. She's gonna drag you down too.
Reed is just fully given in to the pain here. Somi has betrayed him again. V's betrayed him now. Myers betrayed him earlier. His nation betrayed him. He's clinging to the last thing he has, which is just finishing this mission, doing what he was ordered to do, what he is trying to make himself think is the right thing to do. But when he pulls his gun and begins to count down, I do think he is hoping you will beat him to the draw. I do, because why else would he count? If he really meant the shit he was saying, he would have killed V point blank. That he didn't shows that he is not fully sold on what he's trying to sell. He is a broken man beneath it all. He has been ripped apart, dragged here, dumped there, used and abused, lied to and manipulated, all while becoming the very same sort of creature to other people. People who trusted him. And the last promise he hoped to keep to Somi, to pull her out of a dangerous situation, to always be there for her. In this ending, that promise can only be kept by his death. And I think he knows that because he cannot separate Solomon Reed, that man that made that promise, and Solomon Reed, the NUSA agent. And he feels that he has nothing to really live for at this point. Even if Saul, let's say, lives and kills V, let's imagine he probably still gets that desk job. But he's even more alone now. What a miserable life he has to live. I doubt Alex, as she is alive in this ending, would be super eager to dig up the past with him because her trust in him is broken too. As Johnny says, their friendship will fall apart and it will not be able to go back to what it was. No matter how much V tries to warn Reed, he will not stand down. These are his last words after my V shot him fatally in the crotch.
Can't hand her over. Won't. Out of my way, Reed.
You got 3 seconds. 1,
Reed.
2.
Damn it to hell, Reed! I'm sorry, man.
Too damn late.
Fuck.
His final words are, too damn late. To the end, he blamed himself more than anyone else, no matter what he says. He was too late to stop what happened to Somi. He was too late to realize what was happening with Somi and V. Like, I don't think he intends to make all the shit going on around him about himself, but he does, even in his death here, and I feel bad for him because it's not the fun kind of making it about yourself. He dies feeling like he's the worst and he fucked up horribly, and it's like, oh my god, this guy. Even with all the shit he's done surrounding Somi and Alex, I do still feel very bad for him that he just couldn't wake up. But of course, there is the sinoure option. That's always fun. And unfortunately for Somi, one of those endings is the best outcome for Reed. Alex gets killed because Somi realizes she's been made and throws Alex under the bus. She escapes, wreaks havoc using the black wall, then gets captured by Max Tech. And then you and Reed have to track Somi down and steal her back from Max Tech. Using 6th Street, of all the gangs, my favorite gang to say, to help set up an ambush, Reed will actually have a moment where he is frozen at the thought of Somi dying in any way. The walls are closing in on him and the pressure is really making him finally sort of erupt in an emotional way. Reed tries to stop V from prying any kind of emotional confession from him, but with some prodding, he will finally admit his fear after all this time to V.
Reed?
Let's focus on the task at hand.
Damn it, what do I gotta do to get you to talk to me?
We are talking.
Yeah, see that. Spill it, come on.
You have any questions about MaxTech? Now's the time.
Fuck me. Dodging always your go-to when the talk gets tough?
You want to know the truth? Fine. Today, or 7 years ago, don't know what exact point I fucked up. The end result's that now we're here while she could die. I just pray that she's the one we're saving. The Somi I knew, and not some... fucking scared, V. Scared my grip on everything is slipping. There. Happy?
If anyone's lost control in this sitch, it's her, not you. But it's still so me. She's there to save, truly. And I believe we will.
It's an either-or situation, V. Either we got it right, could very well be that, or she's been playing us for fools from the start.
Reed has given kernels of this confession throughout the story, but he's never fully thrown himself into it. Here, it is a genuine, no-holds-barred admission. What else does he have to lose but Somi herself? He really does blame himself, but that blame creeps all the way back to simply not being there to protect her from what Myers did to her, from turning her, potentially, into whatever monster the Blackwall might have made her. Reed says in the other ending, even prior to the stadium, that Somi isn't the person he knew 7 years ago. But deep down, he knows it's not just a matter of personality change, because she literally is fighting a war with a digital tsunami. He's scared because his own grip on his reality is slipping. His whole life is being overturned with all the truths being flung at him. He's still aware it could all be a ploy by Somi. As soon as he expresses his emotions, he tries to cram them all back in again. I think it also means a lot to Reed in this ending that V did stick with him. He could trust V, and I think Reed does, for a period of time here, actually trust V a lot. Anyway, as V cries their way through the sinoure facility, or at least I was crying the first time I played it, we see flashes of Somi's memory, or what remains of it. We see the promises that Reed made her, the reassurance that Somi wouldn't regret joining the FIA. In one memory, Somi asks him 2 questions.
You regret it? Like, ever?
Once, a long while back. Decided then and there I'd never regret it again. Second question?
Ever broken a promise?
Once. A long while back. Haven't broken one since. Never will.
Careful. I'll hold you to that.
Somi had a feeling then and there that no matter how much she wanted to trust Saul, no matter how much he may have made himself believe he was right, she just couldn't. How many times had he gone through this same cycle, breaking a promise to someone he cared about, for what? Loyalty to an entity that chews him up and spits him out whenever it needs him in the field again? Songbird went through pain and terror at Reed's side anyway, on who knows how many ops. Him being at her side didn't completely protect her, not when she needed to serve her country. Could she really have trusted Reed to help her escape all those years ago? Is that just a bit of delusion that I'm having? And the big oh fuck moment is when we see how Reed recruited Somi, when we actually get to see what he said to her. How he pulled her from a run while she was screaming. Maybe the Militech data for countermeasures or the Netwatch was just about to fry her. I don't know. Then there's Reed, who presents himself as almost kind of saving her from the fate of getting fried by Netwatch. And he presents the option to join the FIA. And then he starts talking about what can happen to the people she cares about if Netwatch finds out who bought her a deck, who lent her money for this piece of gear or that piece of gear.
Making me leave my home, my friends, everything worth a damn to me?
What's ahead is important. Worth so much.
Yeah, no. Hard pass.
Dick, Netwatch rolls up here, what happens to your people, who trust you, who care about you. Netwatch will know who lent you the eddies for your debt, who let you tap into the subnet of the cafe downstairs. Understand this. I'm the one chance at keeping you safe. Your friends safe. Or sure, let them get hurt.
Blackmail. Is that your play? Don't know me enough.
But I do know your type, and I know your answer. Just haven't admitted it to yourself yet.
Sure, you could just say he's telling her the true stakes of her choice here, or you could also say he is manipulating her. He was her one chance to keep everyone safe. That's how he framed it. And if she didn't, well, then she's just putting the people she cares about in danger. He's maybe convincing himself that he was doing a good thing, saving this kid by any means necessary. And I wonder how much he regrets that day now. In the core, we have two options. Deny So-Mi a final mercy, or give her peace. Reed is at first distraught at a dead Songbird. He says, "We're too late, aren't we?" Not unlike his other ending, where V is forced to kill him. Again, Reed still blames himself. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that this was all So-Mi had left, that this was her final choice. But he doesn't try to kill V in revenge. He just says he blames himself for not getting there first. He can't fully believe that he couldn't have convinced her to want to live. Not yet. He asks V to carry So-Mi's body to the stretcher. He continues to stay near her, grieving her in his own way. He says this as he watches So-Mi wheeled into the NUSA AV. The last time he will probably ever see her.
She asked me once if I'd always be by her side when she fucked up. I said I wouldn't miss it for the world. She didn't believe me. Just smiled. Shook her head, but she wasn't buying it. Tell. Lost all my friends when you recruited me, she said. Now don't you become my enemy. That's all I ask. Was I a friend or an enemy?
Reed will say a very, very similar version of this story with maybe a slightly different vibe in the ending where Songbird is alive and handed back over to the NUSA, but it still remains that he's having doubts. But in this ending, he's definitely more forthcoming with the doubts running through his head. In fact, when you sit down with him on the sand, and one of the dialogue choices you can pick with him when you're talking to him, it makes him say that he needs to help himself now. Which is kind of a big statement, even though it's just a few words. It does say a lot about where this ending is going to hopefully direct him. V can try to comfort him, but Reed retreats into himself. In this ending in particular, there are some words that Reed says, almost like his true last words to Songbird.
Show me. For what it's worth. I hope you're at peace.
And God, just with him wandering off into the desert until the end credits music starts to play, it's just... Like, this guy authored so much destruction. He did a lot of terrible things, and I still feel bad for him here. Like, holy crap, they really knocked his whole story out of the park, especially with this ending. It is so very, very well done. But this is not the last that V sees of Solomon Reed. Oh no, because Reed decides to invite V to a little meeting at the basketball court where they first met. He also, in the same invite, tells V about Alex's memorial in the columbarium, which, to be fair, I'm kind of hard on Reed and Alex's video for the content of the epitaph, and my thoughts on that still stand. Go watch my Alex video if you want to see me go, Reed, what the fuck? But in his case here, he is acknowledging in the texts that he is having trouble processing the loss of Alex. It is very in character for him that he wouldn't be able to leave a very, like, lovey-dovey, mushy goodbye note on her memorial, despite everything. It's unfortunate, but you get it. To be honest, him expressing that he does have difficulty processing Alex's loss, and So-Mi's in this ending, does show that he is developing a lot more self-awareness now, and you just hope that this guy's gonna be able to help himself, as he says. And when you see him next, where you first met him, it's yet another reminder of a bygone part of him that he can only really glance back at. But then he will, after telling V that they were a shit FIA agent, failure, disappointment, someone who has tanked Reed's career, ruined his life, he will tell V that they were right. That in the end, Somi was better off in death than in Myers' hands, than prolonging her suffering. He admits that everything he built his life on, the NUSA, the FIA, Myers, his superiors, his past partners and friends, have all been torn down by the intervention of V. But it's less that V ruined them 100%, it's just that V tore down the images of them that he thought they were. With V, he has been forced to wake up. And though he doesn't come right out to say this, he realizes he's been blaming himself in the wrong sense. It was never about shouldering the burden of his team's mistakes. It was never about honor, about fighting for his country, or doing what a good leader should for the NUSA. The oath he swore has turned to ashes in his mouth. He now has to reckon with his role in hurting Somi, in hurting Alex, in looping these two girls into the life of the FIA, of how his principals got most of his previous team slaughtered, their bodies draped with the patriotism that hid Saul from acknowledging his own weaknesses. It's easy to ignore one's own accountability when one can explain away the deaths of these people under the guise of having loyally served their country. Saul has to learn to take proper responsibility for the damage his actions and decisions caused. Not for the sake of a country. He can't justify his actions with the NUSA banner any longer, but for the sake of securing his own soul. A journey awfully familiar to V throughout Phantom Liberty, depending on how you play. He sees the ugly face of his life for what it is, that the FIA, the NUSA, Myers did ruin his life 7 years ago. They ruined his relationships with the people he most cared about, took everything from him, left him stranded and suffering and depressed, lost. And Reed admits, after V is pointing it out, that Reed's anger wasn't necessarily that Somi died. Rather, it was his self-admitted fault that he has trouble losing. He has trouble letting go. He realized when he saw that failure in himself to make that moment about himself, that V had made the right choice. Reed says, "I've got nothing to lose now, but maybe something to gain." It's a shame that it took Somi dying in the Sinoure core for Reed to have that moment of clarity. But you know, that is how character development works. There is no teacher quite like experience and consequences, unfortunately. But it is a wonderful moment when he reveals that he's gonna be saddled with a desk job at Langley, which, as Corpo V says, it's a punishment. One Reed is very aware of and not looking forward to. And I say it's a wonderful moment because he then asks V what they think he should do. And no matter what V says, Reed doesn't commit to anything. But he says, for the first time in a long time, he doesn't know what he's gonna do. And he forgot how much he missed that feeling, that freedom of not knowing, of being able to decide. Not because he doesn't have his overlords, but because, in his mind, he has that veil lifted. That is a form of freedom in and of itself. This talk is not as nice should you have returned Somi to Myers alive. Reed tries to tell himself that saving Somi was the right call, hoping that someday she will see that too, despite her begging, pleading that very day to be free in that most basic of ways. It was quite heartbreaking the way Somi is just begging Solomon to just let her die. But he does have his doubts. He can't quite chase them away here. He recalls when he drove her away from Brooklyn, an image he can't get out of his mind.
I can't help stop seeing the same scene, like it's burned inside my dome. We're in a car, moving, leaving Brooklyn. She refuses to turn, look back. No tears, no sobbing, just a statement. Seems like you saved my life. She doesn't believe it. I can hear she doesn't believe it.
All throughout the handoff of Somi, he wrestles with his doubts. He remembers what Somi said, how she didn't believe that he was actually saving her. He fights what he knows about Myers versus her promises of looking after Somi. He has no idea if he's done the right thing. And that period of not knowing, nobody likes that feeling. In the post-ending talk at the basketball court, we see Reed still in denial, perhaps more so than before. He admits that Somi won't ever be the same person she once was, but he has hope that something can be done, that hope makes it worth keeping her alive. Which calls back to what Johnny said about hope right before we entered the Sinoure facility.
Chick's a half brain-dead, half AI-controlled zombie, yet still the Gonk's convinced his old partner's trapped inside. That only he can save her.
What would the Big J do? Abandon hope?
Know what being in the army taught me? Hope dies last, cause the backstabbing bitch makes damn sure she gets you killed first. So you'll warm the fucking grave for her. Saw many thousand-yard stares. Willpower gone, hope hovering for no reason. Wanna bet on miracles? Go ahead. I'll pass.
And we see, as I said earlier, in the Phantom Liberty ending, 2 years later, Somi is not doing good. Like, he doesn't even really know how she's doing. He hasn't seen her or talked to her. That hope is ultimately just empty. V can tell Reed here that he is in deep denial, and Reed does get mad. Reed despises it if V doubts whether they did the right thing or not. The last thing he wants is more doubts from V now, not just the ones he already has inside himself. He hates V saying, "You actually hate that desk job. Why are you talking about it like you're okay with it?" Reed just says, "What do you know about my job? I can't afford to make mistakes. I can't afford to second guess." It's a sad thing that for Reed and Somi both, a lot of the time, the endings where they live either totally are, or could be argued to be, the worst endings. As in, for Saul's best ending, Somi has to die in Sinoure. For Somi's maybe best ending, albeit she might be a tool of Mr. Blue Eyes now, Mr. Blue Eyes video is coming, I promise, Reed has to die. But when I say best, I mean potentially best for that character, because let's be real, every single ending of Phantom Liberty is so jam-packed with details and different outcomes and so much good writing. This is, you know how usually when you play a story where there's multiple different endings, you can usually tell what the canon one is? I can't fucking tell. I don't know if all these endings are so good and interesting that while all managing to be largely fucked up with their pluses and their minuses, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning more towards Somi dying in Sinoure as the canon ending, but I don't know. I might change my mind when I make the Songbird video on that. That's how good all these endings are. They're so chock full of incredible writing and potential character development, but it's Solomon Reed's that feels the most full. Tragic, but it's a fistful of narrative fulfillment. This sleeper agent, who has been asleep for a lot longer than 7 years, but in the ending where Somi dies, he actually wakes up and realizes, albeit too late in a number of ways, what he's been so willfully blind to all these years. What's that saying? None are so blind as them who will not see. I don't know where that's from. Reed will never be free of his past, of the things that he's done. He will carry those memories of Song So Mi, of broken promises, of the pain of betrayal. He'll carry them like how baby Johnny carries all those past mistakes of real Johnny with him. Memories of a life that wasn't even his, but that he still takes responsibility for. But like Johnny, depending on V's choices, we can open up a new door, dust off the cobwebs, and remind this broken human what exists beyond the limits of his ideals. Reed's principles have served as his prison, and they will continue to do so unless Reed learns to open his eyes, and not just see the real world around him, but to finally face the reflection of the man he has become. Otherwise, Reed's death becomes another self-perpetuated tale of ironic tragedy. A man who paved a road to hell with his good and noble intentions. Maybe, though, his death is just how it's gotta be. For So Me, for Alex, and for V to save themselves. Oh my god. Okay, so that was a long one. Thank you, first of all, for waiting for this one. I really hope, I'm recording this like on August the 13th. I hope that this video is out within the next less than 2 weeks. I really hope so. I didn't think I would spend almost 2 hours talking about Reed, but I did, and yeah, it was a joy, and I don't know if this made much sense. Thank you very much for making it through to this point. It means a lot. The other thing too, this is a fun little fact that I found out. So Solomon Reed or Reed Solomon code it's a type of code that was actually used to apparently decode a lot of the FF digits, the cyberpunk conspiracy thing with the letters and the numbers that I keep forgetting. And that's pretty cool. And the other thing too about the nature of that code is that it's good at like deleting errors and false codes, which I think is a fun metaphor for what Solomon Reed does as an agent. He sees through the false shit, the bullshit and all that, but he ultimately struggles to see through his own bullshit at the end of the day. And I really like that we have the chance to help him finally see through that bullshit, the top of the pyramid bullshit here. It's such a shame that so many people have to die, Alex and So Me, for that to happen. Especially Alex, poor Alex. Thank you so much to the channel members for the support of this channel. Channel members, you really do make a difference here, especially as I get more into making longer form content. Takes longer to do production and everything, and it's longer between uploads, so thank you very much for what you guys are doing for the channel here. And also, members, if I was ordered to betray you members, you want to know who I'd betray? I'd betray the person who ordered me to betray you guys, because I don't like locking people in trains. Who does that? That's just wrong. And thank you, of course, to everybody for simply liking, watching, commenting, and subscribing. Please share your opinion on Reed, because I know that there's going to be a lot of complex takes on this very hard to read man. Ha ha ha. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again in the next one. Goodbye.